Digital.
It's time for Hard Talk, Power 102 Digital Wednesday, with our main host, Farid Ali, and we have a very special guest. I'd leave Farid to introduce our guest for today's program. Good afternoon, Farid.
Good afternoon, David. It's such a pleasure to be here again and sharing, our presence with the general public. Today, we want to thank Mr. Din Chong, Mr. Michael Din Chong, Chairman and Managing Director of Invaders Steel Orchestra, who will be sharing some of his time with us. Mr. Din Chong, thank you so much for taking the time to be here this afternoon.
Not a problem, man. Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Invaders Steel Orchestra has always featured on the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago's carnival, and dating back from, if I may say, times immemorial. Bands came after in the West, came long after Invaders, and in fact they would have if I may put it this way, they would have come from the embryo of Invaders. I can go so far to say that so many of the bands that we've interviewed and the persons holding similar posts like yourself have said that their roots came from Invaders. Not too long ago, we had a chat with Mr. Dr. Ray Holman, and he was saying that he initially started in Invaders before he moved on to other things. So the contribution of Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra to steel band music and steel pan music, no one needs to herald that in any which way. Your history and your antecedent speaks for itself. Sometimes we try to measure success in terms of panorama results, but panorama results never tell the true story. It's just an opinion of judges, and though it's prestigious to say that you've won this and you've won that, and the number of panoramas you've won. The body of work speaks for itself. When history recalls one's contribution, it in the DNA of our carnival, in the DNA of the steel pan industry, no one can undermine the contribution of Invaders Steel Orchestra. Tell us something. Tell us about your relationship with Invaders and where it began.
Oh well, my relationship with Pan was ever since I was born. I was born Belmont, just a stone's throw away from Belmont 50 Mentions, and and my cousins, and they were involved in bands like Renegades and White Dilemma, Blue Diamonds, and so on. So I mean, it was always in my blood and the DNA, as you say. So I always had a yearning for it. But as a young man, I tended to focus more on sport and my schoolwork. And it's only as an adult, which is actually about 30 years ago, that Ricardo Hubbard, the former manager of Invaders, he had invited me across to play. And since then, I've been there and I haven't left.
Right. What are some of the things that stand out in your mind in terms of the relationship you've had with them? I mean that in the context of something would have kept you and drawn you into Invaders in such a way that you never left. Is it that there's a family relationship, a solidarity with the band and the players that has kept you there?
Well, we have pride ourselves in that, and being on management for 20-something of those 30 years, it has been an objective of mine and my management team to always, have that family atmosphere. But in terms of initially, when I joined that band, as I said, I had a cousin actually who was a member of the band some years ago. And but besides that, when I joined the band, I was privileged to meet some of the elders of the time, people who were there from like Francis Wickham, who was there from the beginning, the origin, 1937. Bertie Manette, he wasn't in any band at the time, but I was still privileged to meet him. He had just left, giving up the reign kind of thing. So, and he was still alive at the time, but there were so many others who would lie on the bench and so on. And sadly to say that they have all passed, it's really sad to say. But that, I think I've been privileged to bridge that original era of the band, 1937. And when I joined in 1994, I was able to meet these elders and to learn the history firsthand. And I think now to carry it on or to educate the young players. So that is what, what have initially stimulated my pride in the organization. And then, as I said, we always try to maintain that family atmosphere. where we pride the human resource as the most important element in our organization. So we always give it 100%. So since then, everything has been going fine. And as I said, being at the helm, my effort is really to try and keep the team together. We think very much team as we go forward.
What have you all been doing in the context of the Christmas season? I know a lot of steel bands and stateside performers derived out of various bands. They tend to do Christmas gigs and so on, playing Christmas music, as we would say. Have you all been doing some of that in terms of doing corporate work and in terms of working in Christmas parties and playing Christmas music?
Definitely. We have a very good Christmas repertoire, and that started a while back, but it was propelled by when we introduced an event called Pan, Parang, and Pork. I don't know if you're aware of that event. And that brought us on him up in terms of a Christmas show and so on. And we prepared for that in a big way, but what happened eventually, that was financially superseded by another great idea we had, which is the Invaders Juve and Republic morning. And having those two events a month and a half apart, one event had to give, and unfortunately, the Pan, Parang, and Pork had to give. So we haven't had that event for probably the last 5 years, But it's always at the back of our mind. Up to this week, somebody was asking me, are you all having it? It's there. It's a signature event, and we tend to revive it. But as anything else, sponsorship counts. You know what I'm saying? So we were unable to do those two mega carnival, Pan events, right? So outside of that, though, we have been pretty busy doing corporate gigs, as you said, and for the Christmas season. Actually, quite recently, we were the Prime Minister's residency when he had a little celebration on Saturday gone with Trinidad All Stars.
When we look at the carnival season, which more or less most steel bands tend to start practice the first week in January, right after Christmas. What are your preparations for the season like at this stage? Are your players on a rest and then you start with a bang in the new year, or how do you all arrange something like that in terms of getting ready and getting your players mentally prepared for these nightly sessions of practice?
Well, actually, we are on an active rest. So what we're doing, as I said, our last gig was just Saturday going there. So we're definitely taking this 2 weeks off. But according to you, we are working on our psychological preparation, right? Besides the physical preparation of the instruments and the racks and so on, of course, that must take place ready to go on January the 1st or realistically January the 2nd. That's the deadline for that. But in terms of our players, we have little meetings with the section leaders and so on during this period, although it's supposed to be a rest. But as I said, it's an active rest to prepare psychologically for that. As I would like to say, the biggest, hardest pan competition in the world.
Well, judging on the results of CMOU's examining between 2016 and 2023, you all have been in the top 5 for the past 8 years. So in terms of your placings, you're right up there. Last year was a 4th place. What have you all been doing in order to maintain, and I'm saying succession planning? A lot of what happens through the years is we see players dying, players transitioning. Do you all have an active youth band or feeder to the big band that you all depend on through the years to keep that flow of players and pan players within the remit of and at your disposal? Do you all have an active youth band?
Yeah, we do have an active youth band. Actually, just I think was it 2019, we did actually win the youth steel band competition, the junior panorama competition. We actually won that. Yes, we do. The band is now in its 11th year, right? Doing very well. As a matter of fact, we have now been able to benefit from some of the graduates of that youth program coming into the senior band and the senior stateside and keeping the senior stateside strong, But you started the question by asking, I think, alluding to how we maintain our success over the last 10 to 12 years or so. And one of the reasons that's interesting in the history of Invaders, We have never had an arranger arranging for Panorama as long as Arden Herbert. Before him was Novin Teach Saunders for about 8 years, and even then was not consecutively. And that would have been the longest that any arranger had arranged for Invaders since 1963. Arden Herbert came, and our deliberate effort was to keep him and to grow with him, or him to grow with us. And so we have certainly done so over the last 18 years. And as I say, climaxing, as you rightfully said, in the last 8 years or so, maintaining, a position in the first 5. A lot of people overlook that because, as the saying goes, they only remember who comes first, right? Because even Renegades, the reigning champions, they had a series of forts before they were actually able to hit it recently there. And all congrats and commendations to them. So we hope to follow in the same mold, just knocking, keep doing what we are doing, what we think we are doing correct, what we are doing right, and what maybe we are faltering, to try and improve on that. We just have to keep steady, and we believe that we will do well. Getting back to the attraction of the youths, Arden's music in itself and his, as I said, excitability kind of thing, but his music in itself from day one attracted youths into the band. And since he has come, an added benefit is that the strength of the band in terms of numbers has grown and maintained that number. So whilst on stateside we have a steady core, we also have a steady input of players for the Panorama season. We could safely say that on Tuesday we're going to probably start with over 100 players one time, you know what I'm saying? Because we have that regular support group from outside players. And I would say primarily, I mean, we should take some credit for how we run the band, but I would say primarily because of Arden and his arrangement.
The issue of music education, the issue of music education has always been foremost in the dialogue about the steel band movement. In older times, in a lot of the music would have been learned by rote. The players would come and day in, day out being drilled by a drill master. What is your philosophy? And I mean, in your meaning, I'm identifying you synonymously with the band. What is Invaders' philosophy in terms of music education? Do you all encourage music education in an effort to make your players better players, or what is your view on that?
Well, it's interesting because my personal view was slightly different to my view as the manager of Invaders, in the sense that as an organization, we certainly would encourage and advocate for music education, right? We are in our own way doing it informally. We don't have what some other bands call an academy. We are certainly working towards that direction. We do have a program documented that we are yet to implement, but at the same time, we do have a young leader in terms of Tia O'Neill, who is musically educated herself, a graduate of UTT, and she takes that band, on her own, and she, and as I said, informally would teach music literacy to the members of the youth band. But we have to be careful as to why these youths join the band. You see, they didn't join to learn music or pan music per se. They join to learn to play the band, right? Pan, right? So we have to subtly, encourage them to do it. But certainly on their own, for example, if they do music in school, privately, or if they go on to UTT, we certainly encourage them. We certainly give them all the support that we could give them, in order for them to be, as I say, musically literate. Because what we have found is that just like other bands, what we have found is that sometimes the arranger, and our arranger is foreign based, right? So just like when we're doing music, he would actually send down scores or do it online or what have you, and then we'd have people in the band who would be able to read the scores and pass on the music, and things happen a lot faster when they need to be. So it really is an asset, not only to Invaders, but I'm sure to all other steel bands, for players to be musically literate and not just the arranger. And a lot of arrangers are not musically literate, they're just gifted. But certainly it would add. My personal view is that rote learning, the whole experience of how we learn pan in the panyard, it's unique, it's different, it's our culture. And I would, based on that personally, I would not force music literacy onto everyone, but certainly offer it for anyone who is interested in furthering their education in that way.
What is the average age of the band, of the membership? And when I say average age, naturally in evolving an orchestra and evolving the band, you need that balance of experience and youth. Because that carries the band moving forward. And the older players or the more mature players will be able to usher the younger ones into the culture and the climate of the band. How do you all philosophically create that blend? Is it something that you all consciously engage in terms of trying to infuse youth at the right time rather than simply replace the more mature players?
Well, we are always recruiting. And you asked the average age. The average age is about 30 years now, right?
Right.
We are always recruiting. But what we find now is that players are joining our organization younger than before, right? So we actually have players in the band who are there 20 years and they actually joined when they were 14 years. And I'm saying consistently on stateside, right? So, I mean, youths now, well, I don't want to say no because we're talking about somebody who joined 20 years ago, you know, and they found something. And I think the key to it, the staying ability is the fact that Invaders recognizes that somebody 14 years to 25 years is very much an adolescent, very much a youth, and very much in their developmental stage. And we have always factored this in, both, you know, not only in terms of music, but in terms of social and emotional development and all of these sort of things. We have always recognized that, factor that in. We do workshops, we do counseling sessions and so on. So, and because we recognize that we are complementing, we are an agency, just like the school, just like the church. We are an agency in society to help in the development of our youth. So we work together. And when I say work together with the parents, certainly parents having their children stay with us for such a long while is because there is a common, how to put it, our ideals, then we share common ideals, right? So the behaviors that they bring into the band are the behaviors that we nurture as well. In other words, they bring good behavior to the band, we help nurture we expect that, we help nurture it. If it's not so good, just like if they're at home, how they're reprimanded and so on, of course we wouldn't reprimand them the same way. But just like how parents want their children to develop in the right way, so do we. And I think we, in that sense, we work hand in hand with the parents. And so we were able to hold on to those youths. As I said, we have had awards, we have awards at ceremony, and we have people at 20 years receiving 20-year awards and so on, you know, in the band. So that has to be, you know, a testament to what we are doing. But certainly, it, as you alluded to, it's a conscious effort. It's not just you come in, you pass through, if whatever you leave. You know, if they have issues, you know, we try to talk with them. If they invite us into their private life and that sort of thing, you know, and we try to work hand in hand with them. And sometimes some of them do leave us, but we hope leave, you know, better people, better persons.
Active mentorship programs, not just in terms of players mentoring younger players, but mentorship in terms of bringing in persons to have conversations, dialogues with the membership, try to develop the membership emotionally, mentally. Like when I was in teaching, I was a former teacher. We used to have mental health days where we have seminars where someone would come in and just chat with the teachers, discuss what the frustrations are, try to encourage and to uplift. Do you all have programs like that in relation to developing your players outside of the season? Because, you know, you don't want a player disappear on you. And you hear, I haven't heard from this one in 3 months, 4 months. Just to keep in touch, just to ensure that you're looking after their development physically and emotionally.
Yes, I said it's a conscious effort. And we do have regular workshops to develop their etiquette, to develop their business sense, to develop their common sense, you know, anything that is required, their emotional intelligence and so on, how to deal with conflicts and so on. You know, yes, we do have regular programs, as I say, but a lot of it is done internally as well, where we have workshops conducted by, as you said, is interested, you said mentors, by people inside the band itself, you know. So, and then ever so often we'll bring a professional from outside. So like during the COVID, for example, we recognize that as the COVID lockdown as a very crucial period where we could have lost members, right, rather than gain members. And we did actually lose one or two on stateside. But what we recognized as well was the mental and emotional stress that people were going through, and not necessarily our players, but in the world. So we took the initiative to actually have online workshops and so on, you know, to guide them through, have professionals come in and online and, you know, help talk to us and you know, to keep our mental health intact so that when things open up, that we'll be ready to go again.
Through the years, it's become more visible, female presence in a band, the gender differences. You know, we would have associated steel band and players 50, 60 years ago as a man thing. What we're seeing now, because of the school panorama, because of women getting more involved in music, and it has infiltrated been infused into the various steel bands. What is your observation in terms of what is the balance in Invaders? Do you all have more women than men? Is it a balanced number, or do you see more women showing an interest in playing steel band music, and in this case with your band Invaders?
Well, interestingly, what you're saying is totally correct. And if there is any macho steel band in the world, it would have to be Invaders in terms of our history, right? But little by little, we have been attracting women from ever since, though, but more so now, to the point where our stateside and by extrapolation, the panorama side is about 50% females. You know, and when you have that kind of composition in on stateside year round, what it eventually evolved into is a management team where we have about 2/3 of the management being female.
You know, I brought you here, and I've been trying to, in a very skillful way, bring the issue of you all acquiring property into the dialogue. Tell us something about the fact that you all have officially acquired property in terms of, well, your station where you have been for so many years, but it's now officially an acquisition of the orchestra as an entity. What are your plans for the development of the yard, of the property? What we've been observing is that a lot of the steel bands now have, and if I may use All Stars as an example, they have a gift shop that is there year round, and they sell memorabilia synonymous with the band. So there's an income stream in terms of memorabilia. Also, they have like, and not just All Stars, but Phase 2, not too far from you all, they have a restaurant area where persons can visit the yard even during the course of the day, through the course of the year. So the yard is an active yard that breeds income and creates, I don't want to use the word wealth, but creates income levels and income streams for the organization. Are you all venturing along that path? What is your corporate model, at least philosophically at this stage, in terms of where you hope to be?
You call some bands there, right? And Invaders itself being one of the oldest steel bands in the world, we are far behind those bands. You said about acquisition of the property. Invaders is on the original spot, so we could also boast that we are the oldest Spaniard in the world, because there's no other band existing on the original area for so long. We have been there since 1937, and they haven't been since 1937 because actually the Manettes who founded the band, they were living on the property, 147 Chagrit Road. And little by little, it was a barricade in a sense, and as one moved out and the building broke down, there was more space for the band. And then eventually, by the grace of Miss Springer, the owner at that time, we were allowed to stay there, without any worries. However, at the time when I joined in 1994, around that time and before that time, well, the owners would have handed down, obviously, and it became a little tenuous in the sense that there were threats. We're to the point in 1973, I believe we were actually evicted. But since then, there were always threats and uncertainty. Now, that is a background to the fact that, well, you said phase two. I'm not sure about phase two, but I know All Stars and Renegades, what they are able to do in their yard is because they have tenure. We have only managed to get tenure late last year on 147 track. Now, imagine that. We have been there since 1937. You alluded to the fact that we in the DNA of the development of pan, and that is so correct because the invention of pan was in the late 1930s, right? And we started in 1937. So the history of Invaders is synonymous with the history of the development of the instrument and also steel bands. Yet, we are probably one of the last bands to be gifted, right, our property by the government. Now, that having said that, it is not to say that we were asking the government and the government was just taking their time. It wasn't as simple as that because remember, our property was owned by a private, owner, right? So the government could not have stepped in. But when things were getting desperate in 2007, the then Joan Newell Williams, she was the Minister of Culture, she found a way to propose that 147 Tragreed Road, because of the contributions of Ellie Manet and the likes, because of our contribution, that the property be proposed as a National Heritage Site. What that did for us in 2007 is that it gave us a kind of deed of comfort. Because it was proposed as a National Heritage Site, the then owner could not have evicted us. They had to negotiate with the government for the government to repurchase because it's leased property, right? And that only came about at the end of last year. So this is the first year after 83 years or 86 years that we could rock back and say that we have property. Now, having said that, that is the basis for business, meaning that if we want to apply for a bar license, we now have the property to do so. We could not have done so before. Even when you look at our property and the development, it's just a shed basically. Why? Because we could not have built on the property because we did not own the property per se, right? So we have been, although one of the oldest bands in the world, we have been kept back by the fact that we didn't own the property. So now it brings me to that's just the background. The question is, what vision do we have for the property? Of course, to have a vision, you also, a real vision, and to realize your vision, you also need financing, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, we don't have that kind of a financing. So eventually we're going to have to rely on the government or, sponsors or what have you to help us. I'm not saying to give us, to help us, because certainly we would want to help ourselves as well to develop the property. Now, bear in mind, I just said 147 Tragreed Road, the property that we now occupy or have been occupying for the last 86 years or so, that has been proposed as a National Heritage Site. So we cannot go right out and say this is what we're going to do. We have to do it in collaboration with the government as well, right? So that's that aspect of it. But I suppose you're kind of hinting to the fact that we also recently, just a couple of weeks ago, acquired the property next door.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different story. Whilst the 147 Tragreed Road is a heritage site, we are looking at the property next door to be, the future of Invaders in terms of 147 is our past, our historical past. 149 to 151 Tragreed Road is now going to be our future, right? And in terms of that, we are looking at, because of where it's located as well, or where we are located, at a live music center, right? Port of Spain is now being built as the entertainment center, the music center, and our Repeater Avenue and that sort of thing. We want to keep in line with that train of thought. And whatever we do there, the vision is to have our culture, not just steel pan culture, but our culture as a area where it could flourish. So performers could come in. It wouldn't be apartment buildings. Let me put it as simple as that, right? It's going to be an entertainment center, and be it with a restaurant with local cuisine or a bar with a local setting, those kind of things, we certainly want to keep it culture. That's our vision. But everything, as I said before, needs some finance, right? Some capital.
One of the observances that we've made, and when I say we, maybe say I could say more myself, um, it's pretty obvious that you all have very little bleacher coverage in terms of when persons, pan lovers, want to come and sit and listen into the band. You don't have much seating arrangement. Are you all working for this carnival season to have more bleachers on the fringes so people who want to come and listen to the band will have a comfortable place where they can sit within the yard and perhaps sit, because we see all of that sort of thing happening in all the yards in Port of Spain. Is it something that was it within your train of vision at this stage, or you're looking at a little lower down the spectrum?
All right. I think we should need to put this in perspective for your listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with the Invaders Spaniard, right? Invaders Spaniard is practically, I mean, what you call it, a parcel of land to house one house, right? And when we bring instruments for 125 players during Carnival, as you're asking, we actually have racks in the road. All our players cannot practice in racks in the Panyard at the same time. So to come to your question about when you come to the Panyard, there's no accommodation for visitors. I'm saying to you, there's no even accommodation for management as well. You know what I'm saying? Because the space, that is the space that we contended with for so many years. Now, thank God and thank to our benefactors that now that we have the property next door, come first day of practice, January the 2nd, for the first time in the 61 or 62 years of Panorama, right, that we have been entering. This is the first time that we are going to be setting up in a large space where we could set up our racks, you know, set up the banners how we would set up on the stage and that sort of thing. We never had the luxury of doing that before the competition. We would have to go to the Oval for 1 or 2 days to get the luxury of setting up as how we would set up in the Savannah. This is the disadvantage that we have faced over the years. But I want to say our success also has to be, we have to recognize the contribution of our neighbors opposite the Oval, because as often as possible, they would allow us to go in the car park there and spread out. And then more recently, in the last 5 years or so, Ran, the previous owner of the property next door, right, they would allow us to use their area to practice and that sort of thing. So I want to thank publicly Ran Credit Union and, of course, the Queen's Park Oval for over the years supporting us, and the direct result of that was being in the finals for the Panorama for the last 12 years and so on, right? Now, we do have the property ourselves. To answer your question in a long way, yes, we're going to provide accommodation for people who's coming in, you know, and that sort of thing. We mightn't have cover because, you know, we are still in the developmental stage and we don't want to put something and then break it down and so on. But we'll certainly have a better accommodation for visitors next year. And we look forward to people coming and check us out. You know what I'm saying?
Have you all chosen your song? Is it something that you're in a position to reveal to the public what song it is you'll be playing? And have you all done a release and so on as yet?
No. No, we give ourselves until January the 2nd. That is the day we start to practice, right? So we have always given ourselves that deadline. Of course, if we get something earlier clock, we would run with it. But to answer your question, honestly, we don't have a choice as yet. We are listening to a few, you know, soca songs. Of course, we must have a backup in a tune from the past. But certainly we have not made up our mind as yet. We tried a verse and chorus of one of the soca songs. So, you know, we want to match that up. We don't know if we'll have time. As I told you, it's an active rest over these 2 weeks. I don't know if we'll have time to put on another verse and chorus, but certainly we are taking our time to make the best possible choice that we can make, and best possible for us. But we haven't decided on a selection.
I want to put you on the spot. The choice of song that you all went with last year was Bonded.
This year, for
yeah, 2023.
Last season.
Last season. it would have been Bondem. That song, the vintage of that song is decades old. What is your view in terms of Pan Trinbago allowing steel bands to choose songs and draw from the musical catalog of yesteryear for a panorama season? Are you of the view that it should be a situation where a song is chosen from the current music that is available and launched for a particular year?
But it's certainly put me on the spot there, right? Pan Trinbago, I believe, introduced that in their wisdom because of the limited options that we have these days, right? I know some people might take umbrage to that, but the music, from my view and from what I understand, is a lot simpler than it was before. So there's less for the arrangers to work with. But one school of thought might be, well, then maybe that would tax the ability of the arranger a little more. But that's one argument or one point of view. So in that sense, what it does is that it gives us more choice in order to make the panorama, to do justice to the competition. On the other hand, it kind of regresses the progress that we should be making in culture, right? In the sense that maybe we should put some sort of pressure, however that may be, on the artists now to do something with a little more substance that we could use. What is in it for them? I don't know. It's just all of this would be in the interest of culture, right? But how we will do that, I don't know how we will do that. But maybe we just need to work together, right? Because a lot of times we have put out, Invaders in particular, but I know other arrangers would have done their own tunes and so on, put out some brilliant songs there in the market, and we wouldn't get the airplay because we wouldn't get the party play and all that sort of thing. So two things, maybe we need to step up our game so that we could be recognized on the media, and maybe the soca artists could be a little more, I would like to say, conscious, because certainly money drives everything. And if they're making money and they're being successful, by all means, go forward. We asking them to do something for us could be holding them back, that sort of thing. So it's a matter of just being more conscious of culture and in its entirety, and not just your avenue to make money and so on, right? But so for me, one is regressing in terms of we should be always trying to go forward. But two, but then again, it's testament to the quality of the music in the past as well. Huh?
Yeah.
That if because too often we have this culture of new costumes every year, new calypsos every year, new soca songs every year, right? New arrangements every year, and we just throw them behind us. That is throwing away creativity. So they have their pros and its cons. Sorry that my answer couldn't have been more pointed.
No. I
Mr.
appreciate
Dixon,
it. I appreciate
Farid,
what
allow me to ask him a question. Invaders is a quality steel band. It's a steel band to reckon with when we talk steel band in Trinidad and Tobago and the history of steel band. Tell me, are you guys documenting or archiving the history of Invaders? Is there an archive or some kind of documentary file?
Oh, well, in terms of history celebrated, well, you could take that. What he's showing here, there is a history book done by Dr. Remy and Ray Funk. That was done in 5 years ago, 6 years ago, to celebrate our 75th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's Invaders from 1937, 1940 to 2015, 17. I can't recall right now, right? 75 years. Well, if it's 75 years, it would be 2015.
Good. I'll have to get myself a copy of that book.
Yeah, well, we still do have for sale. But on an extension of that question is that in terms of the vision for 147 Tragreach Road, part of the vision is also a museum, setting up a museum.
Great.
Right? Where we would have this history document, people be able to come in and, well, I don't know how much we read these days, but to see it and that sort of thing, So we want to go the modern way of setting up a museum and that sort of thing, digital and that sort. So that is definitely on the cards for 147 Tragreach Road.
Fantastic. Farid.
Steel bands, if I may say, Mr. Ding Chong, they're jealous lovers. They don't like to share their players with other bands. What is your view in terms of a large band like Invaders, allowing their players to play with medium bands and small bands in the various competitions? Is it that philosophically, when you have your players practicing with you, that you keep them all to yourself, and you don't encourage them to play in other competitions with the medium and the small band? That's one. And secondly, I know some bands, say in the large band category, don't allow their players to play on a panorama final night with other bands. What is your view on those things?
Let me answer this by asking a question. Do you know any cricket team, any football team in a competition allow their players to play with other teams? And you know what I'm saying? If you have a team, you have a team. And if you're trying to win a competition, you're trying to put your best foot forward and you're trying to do everything right. And if you have, when you're calling for your soldiers to march, and you have to be waiting for this one to come and this one is missing and that sort of thing, it's going to affect your performance, right? So in essence, that is my view of it. But at the same time, we have to be practical, right? In the sense that you have bands who, some of these players actually come from some of these bands. I'll tell you this, right? They might be playing with Invaders now, but they might have learned and honed their skills in one of these smaller bands or so on, and they feel that they need or they're obligated to go back to the bands and so on. So in that sense, we have an understanding of that. Pancho and Bego has been very considerate in the sense that they have now brought the single band early, brought the small band early, and have the competitions more spaced out. So there's less threat to a particular band in a particular category. All right. So what we do, in our particular instance, you asking me my view or what we are doing. That's my personal view, that if we go into battle, if we go into competition, we need all hands on board. We cannot afford to be looking left, right, or center for anybody to see if they're missing or whatever, right? But having said that, how we have handled the situation practically is that we have allowed our players to play with other bands once, of course, they remain committed to our responsibilities, right? For example, practice and gigs. We cannot be loaning you out per se, and when you come and when we go into a gig, we are shorter or that sort of thing, right? Or what standard has dropped or whatever. So they understand that fully, right? And what we ask of them, though, that come January the 1st, that you give all attention to Invaders. And why? Particularly the next year, because the season is so short. Within 3 weeks, we would be actually facing the judges. So we can't afford to be, a couple years going by, if the season is a little longer, the first 2 weeks, you're a little light and so on, and players could go wrong or what have you, and then you put your foot on the pedal as you get closer to the competition. But this wrongs, you got to come off the blocks running, you know what I'm saying? So we don't have time for that this season coming up here. So we have made a bit of a compromise. Some players, of course, some people, let me use the word people, will understand and comply, and some people will not understand and they will make their choices.
An observation that has been made with regard to anyone involved in culture, any organization, I'll be quite frank and say, when we look at Tuco, much of the Calypsonians, the senior ones, would have passed through the years. Is there within your band? You can't comment on Pancho Bego. Is there any package in place or any vision for some sort of package or something to look after your players as they grow older in the band? We don't want to hear the government had to bury some Calypsonians, pan people die and they die in poverty. What is the vision to look after your membership, particularly your senior membership, and to look after your players and ensure that they don't fall on hard times as the decades go by? Do you all have that sort of vision in place to ensure that you maintain, you look after and maintain your players through?
through like pension plans and insurance and group insurance and so on. Um, Whoever is in my position in the next 10 years, I hope you would be around to interview them. And because I hope the answer will be much different to the one I'm giving now, right? Plans like these, ideas like these, dreams like these require a regular income, right? And steel bands are yet to have a regular income. As a matter of fact, I think we need to diversify. And the only way we could diversify is if we are fortunate, like some of the bands you called earlier in this program, and the fortune that we have now come into, which is having property and being able to probably set up business outside of the music business that will help generate a consistent income into the organization. Once we have a consistent, dependable income coming into the organization, then we could seriously look at things, welfare plans like that to take care of our players. Unfortunately, we do not have that consistent income. So therefore, we do it on a need basis or a one-on-one basis. So certainly, I don't want to go into details, but if we have had if a player, whether young, old, retired, comes to us with a need, we certainly go as much as possible to help them financially, however we could, right? But to put something in place is definitely part of our vision. But right now, realistically, we have to put the business plan in effect first to have consistent income coming in, and then we'll certainly part of our philosophy, I'll tell you this.
Well said.
A popular observation now is we've seen, particularly in the last 2 years, the West bands have been hosting each other. We've seen it with I'm more or less referring to the West bands as in phase 2 have been doing it. We've seen Renegades did it in East Port of Spain, where steel bands have, during the course of the season following the season, if I put it that way, between seasons, they accommodate each other. 3 or 4 bands would play at one of their yards, and there would be, I would imagine that there's a stream of income there for the bands if it may be the host band. Have you all developed relationships on the level where you plan to do the same at your yard now that you've acquired property? So can we look forward to that you're all hosting 3 or 4 bands in your yard in order to keep the spirit of steel pan music alive during the course of the year?
All right, so I'll start once again with 147 Shragray Road. That was a bit difficult to do, right, because of the size of the property. But that relationship you're talking about does not only exist in the West, right? It's really nationwide. I mean, we have been invited. Just recently, we went to Tobago with Buccaneers to perform at their Sunday school and so on. So it's something that it's in the fraternity. It's not just, reserved for the West per se. So we do have that relationship, and we do intend to continue, as we have more space and so on. But I want to say something as well, is that we are advocates that our product should be able to stand alone. You know what I'm saying? And not that we are better than anybody else, but we should have a certain genre of music or something that we have excelled in. Earlier you asked me what do we do for Christmas. I think we are one of the well-practiced, most rehearsed bands for Christmas with Christmas music, right? I might be wrong, but I've been on different gigs and we seem to be very powerful with that. So that is something that we could capture as our own at the time of Christmas. Not that we are better than anybody, but the point is that we need to come up, not Invaders alone, I would say, but with a product. So if you're going to phase 2 Panyard, you're going to hear phase 2. You're not going to phase 2, pay money to go into phase 2 to hear Invaders. It shouldn't be like that. Yes, we could be a guest appearance and so on, no problem with that. But for us, we are thinking that, we should have a product that is so,
unique,
so good that people will be willing to pay or support that product for that period of time. And tomorrow go by phase 2 by all means. Go by Starlift by all means. You know what I'm saying? So first we're trying to get away from the traditional blockoramas, you used to call it.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Mr. Dinchong, I want to thank you so much for making yourself available to us this afternoon. I know in true Trini style, I ask you for You offered half an hour and I stole another 15. But you have to forgive me for
Future
that.
style, I catered for that.
Well, I have to come visit the Panyard myself. I'll introduce myself to you when I come there, and because
Quite welcome.
in my DNA, I do total local music on the job, and I promote it. I'm also an advocate for steel pan in a big way. So I will come look for you, and we'll have a chat, and I'll buy myself a book.
You're quite welcome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for each show enough holiday.
We hope to have you again on for
Yes.
future purposes. What we normally do, and I had that conversation with some of your executive during the season in the month of January. We normally invite the arrangers for various bands to share what their philosophy is and some of their magic in terms of producing a song and arranging. So we look forward to having you all again in the month of January to share at least an hour with us as to what to talk about the music, to talk about the steel band music. But this was an important introduction. I'm hoping to, when we invite you again, that you'll be available to us just to have another discussion like this. It was wonderful and it was very informative. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I look forward to you interviewing Arden, because I don't know if you know it, but Arden started in Invaders when he was in primary school. So Arden is much a member of Invaders. So that interview would be fantastic, I'm sure.
Sure, we'll put that in place.
We look forward to that. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening and blessings.
Thank you, and same to you.
Season's
Thanks for
greetings
having
to
me.
you and your family too, Mr. Ding Chong.
Thank you, and same to you all, and your viewers and listeners.
Okay, thank
Good
you so
evening.
much. Beautiful. Farid, I see we have the other
Yeah.
hold on. Let me just say something here. Debbie, you need to connect your mic and cam before we put you on stage here for the program. If you can hear me. Go ahead, Farid.
To the listening public, who we had no other than this afternoon, the managing director, chairman of Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra. He was quite informative, and for your listenership moving forward, I'm giving the public some advance notice that in the month of January, we would be interviewing on a week-to-week basis at least 2 steel band arrangers to get a feel for the music and what we could expect arising out of Panorama 2024. So you can look forward to hearing from us and to hearing our contribution and to hearing from the arrangers themselves and getting some value in terms of the music that we'll be hearing on the from the steel bands. This afternoon, I took the opportunity to invite to our program Father Ian Taylor. I was spending some time with him behind the scenes having a dialogue. We wanted to carry a conversation with him with regard to Christmas and the season, and what Christmas means and what we ought to in terms of what we ought to expect of ourselves. So whilst we await Father Taylor to join us by way of his physical presence virtually, we would try to relate to the public that on Ash Wednesday, Father Taylor will be joining us, also sharing his views on Lent and what the Lenten season means and so on. Father Taylor, you're here with us. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to join us this afternoon. I was now sharing with the public. I was now sharing with the public that I'm inviting you on Ash Wednesday of 2024, just to have a discussion with us about the Lenten period and so on. But you're here today. Thank you so much for making yourself available. What I wanted to chat with you about is not just the season, that is Christmas season, but tell us something about the work that you've been doing. Where have you been commissioned in terms of what church have you been stationed to, and in what area and community? Where are you at this point in time?
Sure. Okay. So I'm in South Trinidad. I'm just beyond Princestown in a place called New Grant. There are 4 churches. The main church is in New Grant itself. and there are outlying stations, Brothers Road, Sisters Road, and Tableland. These are not large communities, they're small communities, countryside communities. But I must say, after the pandemic and with the arrival of priests, because before my coming, there was a gap of 3 years with no resident pastor. So with my arrival, we have seen a return to the church of many of these people. In fact, tomorrow we are also going out house to house, door to door, doing some evangelizing, carol singing, distribution of New Testaments and other kinds of spiritual literature to help people to have the right focus at this time, at Christmas, but also throughout the year. You read the Word of God and it gives you direction, it gives you purpose, it gives you life. And so that's what I've been doing in the parish. Now, outside of the parish, I'm also working in mission in the interior of Guyana. Some people refer to it as the jungle. So in the Catholic news of this Sunday, just past, my sister, who is the coordinator of the Jesus Explosion, she wrote a widespread on the mission that we did there over a couple of years, and in particular, the one that we did in July of this year. We are seeing a lot of success there. People are hungry for the Lord out in Guyana. We know that Guyana is very much in the news now with Venezuela, and they've asked us to pray for them, which we have been doing. But also, there is a hunger. So although they don't have internet out there, they have data. Although their roads were horrible, but they're now beginning to lay down roads. There were no roads really. There were parks and huge crater-sized potholes, if we could call them that. But there are many communities. The particular parish and region we are in is region 1. And that's a vast region with 14 different mass stations. So sometimes you have to take the boat going up many miles in order to reach 2 of the communities out there, Obadiah and Hotokwai, and so on. So we're doing great. I enjoy the work we've been doing there, and they have reciprocated in gratitude and also in their response by being in church, being in the prayer meetings, and so on.
Tell me something. What role do you see the church playing in terms of bringing some sort of order to the society that we live in Trinidad at this stage? It's not new information that we've had. The latest count is 553 murders for the year 2023. Last year we would have crossed the 600 mark. So Trinidad and Tobago, in the context of its current culture, there is an infiltration of crime. There's an infiltration of wrongdoing, so much so that it has become a problem in itself. The United Nations, by way of statistics, indicated that anytime you have a certain number, like 25 per 100,000 deaths per 100,000, that is considered a national health issue. Our death per 100,000 is 28 persons per 100,000. That's a lot of deaths. The regional average is 6.1. So Trinidad and Tobago, by way of statistics, is a very, very violent society. The levels of criminality that we are seeing, that persons are being exposed to, there recently was an issue at Courts Mega Store, and there are issues on a day-to-day basis that pop itself up. What can the church do, and what has the church been doing in order to bring some sort of infuse some sort of peace or philosophy towards achieving peace?
Well, listen, I have written over the years in the various newspapers, The Guardian, The Express, Newsday. I have stated, and I believe it firmly, that the culture that we have is a culture of lawlessness. And I see its origin really in the carnival culture, because the carnival culture permits lawlessness over that carnival weekend. I've said before that people don't get arrested for drunkenness, nakedness, dirty dancing, and a whole lot. They give out condoms in the thousands, and it's bacchanal, and we call it bacchanal. And then we have several imitations of the carnival, like Borough Day and many other blockos that take place. So when you breed a culture of lawlessness, you must expect it to extend into crime as well. Because if you are not being arrested at that time of year uh, for breaking the laws of the country, and this with the implicit approval of the government, the police, and the church, I would say, you are breeding a society that sees condoning of lawlessness, and they take advantage of it. Of course, the other issues are questions of parenting and what's going on in the schools. I've also maintained, since they took out corporal punishment from the schools, all hell has broken loose. And then with regard to parenting, where you have the one parent home, and usually the father is the absent one, then you have young men who are not mentored to be men and respectful of women and that sort of thing. And when you go to the prisons, you hear those stories. You hear those stories. So the country is breeding a culture of lawlessness, and it is reaping the fruits thereof.
Are you of the view that the major contributor to the criminality that we're seeing is the Trinidad Carnival?
I am saying that the Trinidad Carnival is a great contributor to the lawlessness in this country. And remember, over the years, it has got progressively more licentious. It has become, more laws are being broken over the years. The nakedness has become far more serious. I mean, as you know, it's down to strings and beads and so on. And that's becoming the norm now. So when you do that, and when you allow fornication by giving out condoms, you are telling the people, go and have illicit sex. That's what you're telling them. And I'm saying that this is being permitted by the governments.
Let's pick up in there and deal with an issue to begin with. You're saying that we are down to strings and beads in relation to the carnival. Is it that you're saying also that we have departed from the artistic side of the presentation of costume,
Yes.
and fallen into an abyss of degradation in terms of purely in the context of the costumes are no longer artistic. It's more
Yes.
Vulgar.
All right.
Vulgar, correct. Vulgar, promiscuity, licentiousness, vulgarity. These are the values that are promoted at carnival time. Now, mind you, I heard your previous guest, and I don't have a problem with steel band. I don't have a problem with music, but in question of what is the music encouraging? So especially the music on the trucks, the kind of music encourages the kind of licentious behavior that we see, the bacchanal. And bacchanal music is what the people have grown accustomed to in all the fetes prior to the carnival and on the carnival days as well. And the television stations often have to apologize to people if they captured them in a compromising position, etc. Because people feel free to simulate sex on the street, and they do that, in great numbers. So that's lawlessness, and a society that encourages lawlessness on an annual basis, and not just on an annual basis. As I mentioned, you get it in the Borough Days, you get it in other events that the country would have throughout the year. And the preparation for carnival is a lengthy one. So there are lots of fetes that people can go to, even held by many of the schools, even Catholic schools. So I'm saying that all this lawlessness, you cannot just turn a blind eye to it and expect that either the government, the police, or the church is going to be able to correct the situation. You have to deal with issues at the root. And I'm saying carnival is at the root of lawlessness in this nation.
But you would agree with
Carnival,
me that
as carnival is now and has been for a few decades.
so in other words, you're not against the carnival itself, but you're against the presentation of the carnival in the context of
Right. If
what we have
carnival
now.
was simply, if carnivals was simply the costuming and the displays, as it used to be in the older days, if it was simply that and steel band music that people could enjoy, that would be fine. But it's not that. It's bacchanal, and that's what is promoted.
But you would appreciate that times have changed, that with the evolution of time and the evolution of cultures. You alluded to the fact that, you know, they no longer have a corporal punishment in schools, and that has resulted in a certain level of loose behavior by the school children. In the same way, when we examine music and the evolution of music, that is not synonymous with just Trinidad soca music or music on the whole limited to Trinidad. It's throughout the world. You would appreciate that evolution.
No, but not every nation has a carnival. That's the first thing to note, right? There are some nations with carnival. Brazil has always had their own. Trinidad has exported theirs to Jamaica with Byron Lee and the others, and to the Grenadines, etc., and so on. So the carnival has been exported from here elsewhere, but not every nation has a carnival. We have to realize that. Even the New York and London carnival is really, you know, an extension of the Trinidad carnival. So we have to realize that we are promoting lawlessness and exporting it.
Forgive me for saying, are you of the view that this is a direct act of Tuco or Panchenbego, or do you accept from me that the commercialization of the carnival, in terms of you have promoters who want to sell a product and make money? So in commercializing the carnival now and in an effort to generate income, they cater for a certain genre, a certain age group, and as a result of that, now we have married into the carnival, or infused into the traditional carnival, the fetes, and the fetes, because it's geared towards making money. The fad and the fashion is to play music of that orientation to draw a crowd and generate income.
Well, what I would say to that is, first of all, what you have is the Kaiso men, the Calypsonians, etc. There's no censorship, really, of what they will sing and what they promote. And that's where there should have been censorship, because then that is what is carried into the fetes, into the carnival, and that encourages the kind of loose behavior that we call bacchanal. You see? So no censorship will result in that kind of lawlessness.
I appreciate what you're saying. I'm not here to
contradict. No, let me say something. One other thing. I am not putting the blame solely on, say, the government or even the police. Or I'm saying that the church is also seriously at fault, and the church is. I wrote an article some years ago in which I call on all priests, pastors, imams, pundits, all the religious leaders to call on their people, right? Because the carnival had got so out of hand, to come out of it. But then two Anglican pastors, one was a big vicar, then stripped themselves down to their pants, wearing carnival outfit, to say, we promoting the carnival. So in other words, if the leaders, if the religious leaders don't speak to their people, then they are, at fault, just as those who actually promote the licentiousness and the bacchanal, because you're approving it. I have said, what the priests who agree with this carnival and sending the people out there, the priests say, you go and behave yourself, but they know very well the people are going to behave themselves. I say that on Sunday before Monday, and Tuesday, that priests should tell the people to come in the costume that you are going to wear on Monday and Tuesday, and let us give you a blessing. Mass would never be able to take place after that. Nobody
Oh,
would
Lord.
listen to the priest.
Father, I hear you. You see, my thing is it that you're not condemning the carnival itself, but you're condemning the purveyors of the carnival.
The excesses of carnival, the bacchanal.
Right.
The bacchanal.
Because I've made an observation that in renegade Spaniard and in some Spaniards, the Catholic priests come and they have in the Lenten period, they have crusades
and so on.
Yes.
I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Right.
But you see, if you are just going to go in the Spaniard and you're going to just hold a crusade, but then you're going to, when carnival time comes around, you're going to just tell your people, go and behave yourself. That's a contradiction, because during Lent, you are calling people to repent, to change their behavior, turn back to God. But then you're telling them go in the same morass and you expect them to behave themselves. Now that's, to me, that's contradictory. It's even hypocritical. But if you want to change the topic, go ahead, because I know we have spoken on this.
No, we have time.
All right.
My thing is this: if it is the church is doing its work through the course of the year, the calendar year, then the call to behave yourself on a Monday and Tuesday, the Sunday before, that would be unnecessary, because people would be socially engendered in such a way that they would know how to conduct themselves, not just Carnival Day, but through the course of the year. Do you think that the church is not
true?
enough?
But then, as I have done over the years, over about 40 years now, I have been taking young people to camps away from the carnival, because I know that that is a source of temptation for them. And Our Father, which they pray every Mass, and that people pray in their normal prayers, says, lead us not into temptation, but you're going to be led into temptation when you go down there. I mean, it's there in your face. The behavior, the licentious behavior, as I say, the simulation of sex, the nakedness, the drunkenness, the infectious music that encourages you to mash up the place, to whine on something, etc., etc. A young person is not likely to be able to resist the power of the environment in such instances. So it is hypocritical to just tell them, well, all right, this is the way to behave during the year, but go down there now and behave well. Well, listen, they tried that already with a Catholic band. They brought out a Catholic band. And the first year, okay, maybe 200 people. Next year, you had less people. And the third year, they couldn't bring out the band because nobody want to go rally. You see, people, and then the band cannot compete with the power of the music of the DJs on the trucks. So it was useless. It was a drop in the ocean, and it would have made no difference. And look, on Carnival Day, people are not looking for you as an example of how to dress and how to behave, you know. They are taking license on that time. If you look like that, you looking weird. You out of place. They will ask you, what you doing down here when you know what this is about? So we can't pretend and we can't be hypocritical about the carnival and its impact on our society. It does breed lawlessness. Fights also. Rapes also, but they try to keep quiet the rapes that occur. But I'm aware of
David, it seems that he's just drifted offline a bit, but I'm sure he'll be back. Yeah, you're here with us. We had a small dip in transmission there. For those of you all who are listening and you're tuning in at this stage, we have Father Taylor, the priest associated with Newtown Catholic Church. Are you here with us again? There was a slight dip in the connection. Father Taylor, your volume. You
gotta turn on your microphone.
Yeah, turn on your mic. Turn on your mic.
Yeah, we're not hearing you. Check your audio.
Yeah, just touch the audio there and you'll reconnect. Father Taylor, I don't know if you're hearing us, but we're not hearing you, but I'm seeing you speaking. You need to turn on your volume. You need to put on your mic. We lost the
His
audio.
microphone is on, but I don't know what's wrong with the audio connect.
You think maybe it's data? What we could do is to try to see if it could log off and log back on.
Yeah, because his microphone is coming on and off, and we're still not hearing him.
David, you want to play a song in the interim, or we can't at this stage?
No, not at this stage. But
I would try to.
But I see you have a lot of other people listening. I guess they are just listening.
I would imagine it would be some of his associates. Father Taylor, are you hearing us? We're struggling to hear you because I think there's a disconnect in terms of your Wi-Fi or something of the sort. If you're hearing us, what we could do is perhaps you could log off and then log back on, and maybe that might help. But David and to the listening public, we have no other than Father Ian Taylor with us. Of course, he was with us before. I had him on the program in the election period of last year, 2020. Well, this year, 2023. He has very strong views. But like everything else, we ought to take things in context. And I think he recognizes that. He's saying that he's sharing his view that he doesn't have a problem with Carnival per se.
Yeah.
But the direction it has gone to.
It's a point of concern these days, freedom. I mean, I shouldn't say these years. For the past couple of years, there has been what should I say? A drop in the people who patronize especially like the grandstand of the Queen's Park Savannah on Carnival Monday and Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember back in the day, when I was a lot younger, I told you my history about being all over the place, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And back in those days, the grandstand would be filled with people. Let me see if I can get the pastor back up again. The grandstand will be filled with people, mostly mature and senior people with their families and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that has dwindled because of the type of masquerading we have today. Right? It's difficult to talk about it that way because I work as an announcer for NCC, but at the same time, what my mission is, where what I call we music and we culture is concerned, and it's difficult to accept the fact that we are now just having let me see if I can put it in a raw kind of stage, bikini beads and flesh. Gone were the days when we had real masquerading, showcasing the we culture of we culture we music. Now why I use we culture we music to describe the programs that I do on air is to describe the culture of Trinidad and Tobago through the aspect of music, arts, and that includes masquerading. Now, I certainly would like to see masquerading showcasing the cultural diversity of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, the Irwin McWilliams, and they did it. with Buku Reef and by local. Well, you know, Bailey, he did all kind of mass, Roman, African. We're not seeing that anymore. Now it's just like a mega party on stage with a lot of gyrating and all kind of. I'm not
Yeah.
against people having fun. I'm not against the music creating that kind of fun. But what I'm saying is that a lot of senior people, a lot of mature people who would have patronized the grandstand of the Queen's Park Savannah and other judging points like on the Avenue. There used to be down on St. Paul Street down there. Those areas would have been patronized to the max with senior people bringing out their grandchildren and some other family and mature people.
Yeah.
Well, as an announcer, people came to me and shared their concerns about the behavior on stage, especially the women folk, the women masqueraders. It has gone into an era. I put them in eras. This is the era where we have that kind of what the pastor will, the priest we have on the father will describe as vulgar and to an extent unacceptable. But it's an era that we're in. I'm not supporting that kind of thing because I personally, I don't mind a band having sections with that kind of masquerading. All right. So we're showing the party aspect of the presentation with a certain amount of sections. All right. But it's difficult to understand why we'll have 4 or 5 big bands, very big, because a lot of the youths gravitate to those bands that are merely beads, bikini, and like I say, a lot of flesh exposure. And the people who come to the grandstand, can you imagine a grandmother and a grandfather, or a grandmother or a grandfather, or some senior member of the family decides to take children to the grandstand to show them what we call mass or carnival.
Yeah.
And this is what they're exposed to. I have a little problem with that. So I think bands now should be mandated to showcase some section or some sector of the Trinidad and Tobago culture, no matter what it is, because we are multicultural, and showcase valued stuff that you can value, stuff that you can archive about Trinidad and Tobago when you're on stage. The same way that with Mark Williams, I always remember him doing the Buku Reef and Buy Local and that kind of thing. Mr. Minchell, he also brought to before masquerade with a valuable story that can tell you about Trinidad and Tobago. I don't mind, like I said, if a band comes on stage and the first sections or the lead sections, let's say sections 1 to 5, because there are bands with a lot of sections. There are bands with like 10,000 masqueraders and stuff. Presenting to the world, because we are on social media now, we just a finger, a touch on your device away from the rest of the world. So if they are looking in and they are seeing this sort of masquerading, what is happening now, you'll have to be within that ilk or willing to be part of that kind of party masquerading, which a lot of senior people came to me as an announcer and asked me if this is what mass is about now, if it's just a flesh parade or if it's a sexual thing on stage. A lot of comments like that I had to deal with, or concerns I had to deal with, and I have to answer in a neutral position because I am an announcer. But I will agree that or I would advocate for masquerading to tell stories about Trinidad and Tobago and our rich, diverse culture and the activities that go along with the culture. So I'm down the middle of the road within this sort of dialogue, I should say, or the concerns that are being shared. I understand where the priest is coming from. I am also amazed sometimes at the level of that kind of I don't want to use the strong word as vulgarity, but it seems so to the senior folk who come to the. I had invited some people to
Dave, let's ask Father Till if he's there. Father Till,
Yeah.
are you with us in terms of your volume?
I think he's there now.
You're not hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
We're
We're
hearing
hearing. We're hearing
Yes,
you.
yes, yeah. I'm back with you.
Good.
David,
So,
I'm
David,
agreeing
give
with,
me.
with what your other guest is
Yeah.
saying. But
no,
I
go
want
ahead.
to say
Go
one
ahead.
thing.
I was just. I'm not a guest. I'm the anchor man here.
Oh, you're the anchor man. Sorry.
Yeah. Without
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
there's no show.
This is Mike Kinchong, or this is whom?
Yeah. But
David, give me 1 minute. I'm leaving you with Father for 1 minute. I need to do something that nobody else could do for me.
all right. Okay. Good. Great. Yes, Father. No, I agree with
Right.
you.
Yes. Go ahead.
I agree with you on a lot of levels that you are talking about. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm into this hook, line, and sinker because I advocate for what I call we music and we culture. I advocate for the presentation of our diversity as a nation. A lot of things in Trinidad and Tobago could be amplified via carnival because it's a global thing now. Like I said, at the touch of your finger on your device, you can let the world see what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Carnival, I think, and it used to be a presentation of who we are.
Used to be.
Yeah, well, I think it's because of the investors, the people who are the stakeholders. If that's a fancy word they use, the stakeholders who bring to the fore a sort of masquerading that caters for the young and the young at heart. Because, Father, I do announcing like you heard me say for NCC, and in the mix of these bands, the kind of gyrating that you're up against and what seems to be vulgar to a lot of people, you'll see mature people there too,
Yes. Well, you see, what you have to also admit is that the music encourages it, both the lyrics and the rhythm. The music is in fact infectious. Music has a certain power to arouse a certain kind of behavior, and that's what it does. And remember,
I agree.
this is a powerful medium at a high volume level, and then you have people in their thousands rubbing up against each other. Of course, that creates sparks, and that's what we get as we see band after band with the flow of nakedness and illicit behavior. You have to deal with the music. You're gonna have to harness the horse that has bolted. You have quite a big job.
Well, I think that is it's difficult to pull back on that. What I'm saying, it can be managed. It the powers that be, because over the years, another stakeholder, quote unquote stakeholder, introduced another venue to showcase carnival where masquerading is concerned. That venue is at the National Stadium of the Intyre Complex National Stadium, where they call the Dome, where the party bands would more or less go to. It's not a competition site. It's more like a party site. So what I'm saying is that the showcase into the world, from my point of view and in my opinion, should be Trinidad and Tobago. We should be showcasing our culture, our diverse culture. We are really, really diverse in culture. And it used to be showcased, and it was a great expose for the great band leaders of before. The George Bailey, even the Peter Minchell brought theater to the stage that did not involve that kind of sexual masquerading, if I should put it like that. But lately, most of the bands, and like Farid alluded to, it's a money-making thing. So most of the bands that present carnival bands, they do it in a sort of replica of what's going on in Rio. I have objections to that. But I have to be careful how I speak because I work for NCC as an announcer on the radio. I am an advocate for what I call we music and we culture, and it has nothing to do with what is upsetting you and what has upsetted a lot of people, because it's good to see on
But
Carnival Monday and
what
Tuesday.
David,
Yeah.
allow me to say something.
Yeah.
It's not just what upsets people who take their grandchildren or children to the savannah.
Mhm.
It's not just that. I'm saying that this kind of behavior
Mhm.
that is permitted with the transgression of the many laws of the country is itself breeding the lawlessness in the country that also leads to the crime. When you breed lawlessness, it extends beyond just the arena of that particular area, and it goes further. Lawlessness breeds lawlessness. And so I'm saying that the carnival lawlessness, in which people are not at all held to account, not arrested for the nakedness, not arrested for the dirty dancing, not arrested for the drunkenness, not arrested for several other things that people are doing on that day, and with the complicity of the government, that all these multi-thousands of condoms are given out. You are expecting people to have open, well, when I say open sex, to have sex, whether they go into the hotels, they go into rooms. But you are breeding lawlessness at this time. And as I said, in other events that take place that mimic the carnival. So therefore, if this country wants to deal with crime, it has to deal with lawlessness. And it has to deal with the lawlessness that is in carnival itself.
I understand what you're saying. Freud.
Father, if it is we were to, I hear you in what you're saying, and I agree with you on some level, right? Commercialization and corporate Trinidad have invested in our culture. They've invested in Christmas. Christmas is not, and I'm not trying to twist the topic away from it. I'm making an analogy. When we look at Christmas as a celebration of the birth of Christ, Christmas has become more than a celebration of the birth of Christ. Christmas is now a season where people of various religions and beliefs, they use the season to make money. They evolve it in a corporate manner where they sell products, they sell memorabilia, they sell the culture, they sell everything is incorporated in the Christmas now. So much so that there was a parang soca for Jesus in your Christmas, because the parang soca artist was recognizing that Christmas was no longer about Jesus. It was about making money about other things. Do you accept that in the same way that the carnival have become a product of the same sort of philosophy, that rather than all about arts and about expression and culture, that there has been a corporate element now that has been infused into, in the same way that Christmas has been infused with corporate Trinidad and corporate philosophy that has taken over? It's not just that the heart of man is so corrupt, it's that the commercializing of these things have led to distortion in what we know it to be.
Yes, but it's also more than that too. Again, it's the radio stations also have to encourage the kind of songs that promote the reason for the season, not just the bacchanal kind of songs that people want to, sing and drink and then wine and get on. So the radio stations have a lot to do, as well as the television stations.
Okay, let me as a media personality, let me intervene here or interject here by saying, we now have social media, Father.
That's correct.
Social media will occupy at least 80% of musical promotions outside of the radio stations. And I agree what you're saying, where radio stations are allowing, a certain kind of music to be promoted and to be played over and over and over and over. So like it adds to what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying there. But I think social media is the
Well,
platform
we
where
are aware of that. But what I'm saying
yeah,
is the
yeah.
radio stations can set the pace and set the tone. You see, if they would do that, perhaps a lot more people would commend them for it. And they would say, well, look, that's what we need to hear. But you see, what's happening is there is no entry point or no one who's seeking a reversal, who is out there promoting this kind of commercialized Christmas. So I'm saying that radio stations, television stations, they can do that. They cannot control the social media, but they can set an example so that people would realize, look, we are far off from the point. We have diverged. And a lot of people take note. But you see, when no one is harnessing what has become an aberration, well, then it just becomes worse and worse. So you start somewhere. And I'm saying the media have a lot that they can do to bring things back on track, as well as again, I believe that the various churches and religious denominations have to speak out. Well, especially Christian, because it's a Christian festival. Granted that people of non-Christian persuasion participate very much in it, but it is the duty of the Christian denominations, not least the Catholic Church, to really call the country back to what is the central message of Christmas. Now, Christmas is about family, it's about love, it's about gift giving, it's about enjoying, and it's about food, it's all those things. But again, you've always got to get back to the central point. Why are we celebrating? And why is it we want to be with family at this time? Why do we give gifts? We give gifts because, well, the kings gave gifts to Jesus at his birth, but God gave the greatest gift, which is his son, to us. So again, we have to hear those kinds of messages coming out on the television, on the media, the radio and other media, so that people recall, because you have children growing up now, and all they are hearing is this kind of, party music at Christmas time. How are these children going to connect with the real reason for Christmas? So it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere.
What is a typical Christmas like for you, Father Taylor? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, one, we have the Christmas masses. We have several Christmas masses which people attend. This year, we'll also invite a number of people to come and have Christmas breakfast with us. And prior to the Christmas, like as I said, tomorrow, we will go carol singing. I've done that in every parish. We go carol singing. So that is a kind of fading art, almost lost, from door to door in a particular community. And we will be giving out New Testaments. We will be giving out literature, and so that people can refocus on the meaning for Christmas. So I think other denominations, some of them do it, because we have encountered some of them when I was in previous parishes. I don't know if we'll encounter any on this occasion. I'm only in this parish 2 years now. So I think everyone who is associated with Christmas, this is the Christians in particular, it is their duty to go public about what they are doing.
With the state of the nation now, Father,
Yeah.
You will have some sort of security with you, right?
Well, in my case, no, we will not have security, because our area is a relatively safe area. But okay. I would say, for example, when we used to do Laventille, I was involved in a move when crime was getting really bad in Laventille. And we started to have pilgrimages up there, meaning you're walking, singing, and praying, and then holding in the church in Laventille, a half-an-hour segment, which was then put onto TV6, right? And that went on for a couple of months. It was sponsored by someone wealthy. And as we would go up, the rude boys, as we would call them, of Laventille, would ask us to pray for them. We went with a few hundred people. We did this a few years ago. Actually, a good few years now. It would be like almost about 19 years ago. I remember we did this. But we did it for people's sake, asked the police, and the police did accompany us along the route. So yes, well, those areas, Living Water does something at Christmas time around the savannah as well. They go with trucks with their music, with people walking and praying as they go around the savannah in the hundreds. More efforts like this need to be seen and need to be done by the various groups that are Christian. This is the time to go public.
Yeah, God is great.
Yes, that's right. You see, if the people who can do something don't do anything, then they cannot complain when things deteriorate.
I agree with you 100% there. Farid, we just have about 3 more minutes.
Father Taylor, I have one last question for you. What role has the Catholic Church to play in the infusion and in terms of its interaction with government to ensure that legislatively things are done in a particular way to reap the results that you want? Do you all have a relationship? Is there a relationship between the secular and the church?
First of all, you have the IRO, and the Catholic Church is party to the IRO, interreligious organization, and they do meet with the government on issues. The Archbishop also meets with members of the government in his capacity as Archbishop of the Catholics of Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, they do. And in the past, when certain people had sought to change certain laws and to allow a certain permissiveness, there were protest actions, and there were those who appealed to their members of parliament and so on. So the church has not been silent on issues, and the church does meet with members of government and with the government as a body under the umbrella of the IRO.
What sort of traction have you been getting from when you work with the state in terms of they hearing what you have to say, and in terms of sharing your views? Do you find
a good example was in the time of the UNC government. I remember that we had Norma St. Rose. She wanted to propose certain legislation with regard to this LGBT community, and the various religions got together and they told Kamla Prasad, they said, listen, the day you legislate in favor of that, just know that you'll lose the next election. And Norma St. Rose was fired immediately. And then we saw her around somewhere ringing bell like a Baptist woman. I don't know if that was her new profession.
Father, I appreciate you taking the time to share with us. You're very forthright, and you're a brave man.
I think this is a time for people to be brave, because if you don't step out and speak up, listen, this guy Niamola, during World War II, Niamola had this to say. Niamola said, when they came for the communists, I did not speak up because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists. I did not speak up because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and then there was no one to speak up for me.
We need more tailors like you. We need the tapestry of Trinidad to be altered.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
To the listening public, we had no other than Father Ian Taylor with us this afternoon. I'm assuring you that he'll be invited again. I know he has strong views, but everyone has a voice with us. David, thank you for your time and for being the anchor that you are. Blessings to the public and blessings to you over the holiday period.
Yes.
And enjoy the season. Enjoy the season.
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you both, Farid and David. I
Yes.
appreciate this.
Me, from all of
And
us here.
God bless all of you and the listening public for Christmas, because Christmas itself is a blessing. God has come down to earth and he's still there with us.
I like this, Taylor. You're a trendy Taylor. Anyhow, from all of us here at Power 102 Digital, I want to wish you all the best with God's blessings, and we look forward to changes in 2024.
Amen. I agree with you on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Farid.
Thanks so much, David. Enjoy the rest of the evening,
Yes,
everyone.
I will keep in contact with you, Farid.
Okay.
Well, that's